Okay, gang, here we go. Polyatomic naming, or ionic naming with polyatomic ions. So polyatomic ions is something new that you've never encountered before. But if you break it apart, you can kind of figure out what's happening. We have ionic bonding, so this is some sort of metal or metallic thing with a nonmetal. Alright. And then, but what we're using is a polyatomic. So poly is like a polygon, right? So this means many, and then atoms, right? So it's a many-atomed ion. Alright? So, polyatomic ions are groups of atoms that have a charge. Alright? So they're an entire group that have a charge, and they behave as one unit. Alright? So as an example, here's carbonate. Alright, when you have a carbonate ion, these atoms, this one carbon and 3 oxygen, kind of all stick together, and they all have a charge of 2 minus. Okay, so it behaves as one unit, and it can kind of move around and get stuck to other cations. Now, it is a little bit more complicated than that, but all we're talking about is naming. Alright, so you just need to know how to name using polyatomic ions. Their names, you're just going to use them straight from the chart. And you're like, well, Mr. McLeod, what chart? Well, this chart right here. I do not expect you to memorize this chart. Okay, all you have to do is be able to read it and be able to be familiar with what's going on here. So on the left side of each of these columns is the chemical formula for the polyatomic ion, and the right side is the name. So this guy here, C2H3O2-, is acetate. This guy here, NH4+, is ammonium. This is arsenate, etc., etc. Notice how a lot of them end in ATE or ITE. Some of them end in IDE. Okay, you just need to be able to find them on the chart. Now, if you're under time crunch in a quiz or an exam, you might want to be very familiar with this chart so you can find them quickly. Okay, but I'll always give this to you, and I do not expect you to memorize it. So, here we go. We're going to write some formulas and name some names. So we've got magnesium, and then this polyatomic ion right here. Well, magnesium is in the second group, so it's got a charge of 2+. And then this guy right here is ClO3. So take a pause, go back to the chart, and try to see if you can find ClO3 and figure out what its charge is. Good. You found that it was chlorate, and it has a charge of -1. Now you can do the crisscross thing, or you can see that we need 1 full chlorate to match the magnesium, and so we need a magnesium, and then we need 2 of these chlorate things. Now, in order to represent that we need 2 of them, we're going to use parentheses and put the 2 outside like this. This 2 means that we need 2 full chlorates to provide the charge of the magnesium. Think of it kind of like in math. If you had 2 times x plus 2, you would distribute this 2 to both of these things. This 2 means that we need 6 oxygens and 2 chlorines, right? Or 2 full chlorate polyatomic ions. All right. Now we have this guy here. This is gold plus. Yeah, it gives us the charge. That's nice because it's a transition metal. And then we have this guy here. Take a pause, go back to the chart, and go ahead and find it. Good. You found that it was chromate, and it has a charge of 2-. All right. So this is gold chromate. All right. Now we see that gold here has a charge of +1, and chromate has a charge of 2-. We can do crisscross, or we could see that gold has a charge of +1, chromate has a charge of 2-, so we need 2 golds for every 1 chromate. Now notice I don't have to do parentheses on this guy because he's just all by himself. And I don't have to do parentheses 1 here because that's the same thing. Alright, now we're going to name. Alright, so your job simply is to identify, what the cation is and then what the anion is. Well, the cation is this guy here. This is our metal, and you know that that is simply lithium. And then this guy here is our anion, and you have to find them on the chart. Okay, if you try to find phosphorus and oxygen and you come up with something like lithium phosphide oxide, I'm going to laugh. Okay, you got to find this polyatomic ion on the chart. So you take a pause, go over the phosphate, and you go over the chart, and you find that it's phosphate. Okay, so this is purely lithium phosphate. And that's it. Alright, now this guy here is a little bit harder. Both of these are polyatomic ions. So this says we need 2 of these guys and 1 of this. Alright, so we got to look for both of these separate things on the chart. The first one is NH4 plus, and it's known as ammonium. And then this guy over here is SO4 2 minus, which is sulfate. So this is ammonium sulfate. That's all there is to it. Okay, now we're going to take the names and we're going to write the formulas for them. So we've got calcium. Well, you know calcium's group 2A, so it's a 2 plus, and then you have to find acetate. So you go over your charge, find acetate. Acetate is C2H3O2 minus. Okay, you can do a crisscross, or you can look and see we need 2 full acetates for each calcium. So this guy becomes Ca and then parentheses C2H3O2 because we needed 2 of them. Right. Ooh, now we have one with a transition metal. So this is platinum 2. Okay, so platinum is chemical symbol PT. Okay, so we have PT, and we know its charge is 2 plus. And then we have cyanide. Okay, and we look at our chart, we find cyanide, and cyanide is Cn minus. Okay. So now we see we can do crisscross, bring the 2 down here, bring the -1 over here, or we can see that we need 2 cyanides for every 1 platinum. So this becomes PT parentheses Cn2. And then finally we have aluminum sulfite. Well, aluminum is in group 4A, which means it has a charge of 3 plus, and sulfite is SO3 2 minus. Okay, this is one of the times that I would highly recommend if you have a 3-2 on these. Just go ahead and do crisscross. It's the easiest way to do them. So this means we need 2 aluminums and we need 3 of the sulfites. So we'll put parentheses SO3 2. That's about as complicated as they get, doing them with either transition metals or the double polyatomics, so on and so forth. Other than that, these guys aren't too hard. It's just kind of a combination of everything you've done so far with just a little bit of a twist in there. Go ahead and do some practice, check your work, and take the checkpoint.